Our first speaker this morning is someone it's already up there. Spoiler alert, it's already up there. But you saw her on the Avenger panel. How great was the Avenger panel, the financial market panel yesterday? Yeah, it's okay. You can give it up for the panel yesterday. If Trisha was in the room, I'd love to thank her for moderating that with such elegance and eloquence. But one of the things that we wanted to share with you here is simple and easy to do trading, right? And instead of using a million indicators on your charts, how about you just use one? How does that sound? Some of our instructors, like our Forex instructor yesterday, they use none, right? But if that's a little too off the deep end for you, how about you just use the one indicator? Okay, so I think our first speaker today is someone that needs no introduction. It's already on the board here. But please welcome the queen of Fibonacci, Carolyn Boroden.
Okay. Oh, good. It works. Good morning, everybody. How many of you are already working with Fibonacci? Uh-oh, there's some feedback here. Okay. All right. How many of you have actually used it on the time axis of the market? Okay, good. Well, there's not that many people that use the time axis, and that's actually a big edge that I want to teach you about today. So, why would you use this type of Fibonacci analysis? Well, basically because it enables you to identify high probability, relatively low risk trade setups where the risk is clearly defined along with the targets. And I'm going to start with the presentation because when I show you the charts, then you'll have a better understanding of what I'm doing. But I do have charts for you too. So this method works on any time frame and essentially any good market data. Basically, you can't analyze a penny stock with it, but anything else, Apple, Tesla. And I've applied this method to stocks, ETFs, futures, and the Forex markets. It's an excellent methodology to use with option strategies. Now, you can also see things in the market that you'll never see using indicators alone. Now, how many of you are familiar with Fibonacci numbers, or the number series? Okay, so we're not actually going to use the number series for the analysis, but we're going to use the ratios derived from the series. So basically, what you'll find is that in between these numbers in the series is the golden ratio. And then all the other ratios that I use are related mathematically. So the ratios I use every day: 382, 50%, 618, 786, 100%, 1272, and 1618. Now for confirming ratios, if I'm using a relatively large swing, I'll use 236. I'll also use 2618 as my third target for trade setups, if the market gives us more than the first two. And sorry, Aaron, I forgot to tell Aaron I was not a morning person, so excuse me if my voice is not awesome this morning. Anyway, and also we have 4.236. I don't use it very often, but every once in a while we will use that if the market's really on a roll as possible support or resistance. So you know where the 618 ratio came from, but what about some of the other ratios? So 100 or 1.0 divide or minus 618 is 382. 1 divided by 2 is 50%. The square root of 618 is 786. 1618 is the expansion of 618. And the square root of 1618 is 1272. And 618 minus 382 is 236. So they're all related mathematically. But the main ratio is the golden ratio. So how many of you already use price retracements? Okay, so here, for retracements, we're basically running any possible low to high on a chart for potential support using the ratios of 382, 50%, 618, and 786. Or I'm running prior high to lows on the chart using the same ratios for potential resistance. So here's just a simple example of a retracement. Took a prior low to high. This is a daily chart of square. And you'll see we didn't have any reaction at 382 or 50%, but in this case, we did end up holding the 618 retracement and seeing a nice reversal. But which retracements do you trade against? You're supposed to buy it here, get stopped out, buy it here, get stopped here. Well, what we're going to do is we're actually going to look for the confluence. Here's another example of, again, just a simple retracement. This is a 30-minute chart of AMAT. Took a prior high to low swing, ran the retracements. No reaction in the first three levels. But again, at 618 retracement, we did see a healthy reversal. All right, now what about price extensions? Does anybody use the extensions 1272, 1618? I don't think there are that many people that use the extensions, but they're definitely worth looking at. So price extensions are essentially retracements. Whoops, gotta shut off my alarm. Here they're essentially retracements beyond 100%. I use the ratios of 1.272 and 1.618. We run the low to high swings for possible support using those ratios, or the high to low swings extending up using those same ratios for possible resistance. So here's an example in Facebook where I had a prior high to low. There's actually two examples on this chart. So I took a prior high to low, ran the extensions, and you can see that twice we basically failed at that first 1272 extension. The 1618, we didn't really see a reaction, but we already did see one here. And then another high to low on the same chart. This is always where you watch for moves to terminate temporarily sometimes, okay? So prior high to low, we didn't see anything at the 1272 in this case, but at the 1618, we did see a decline. I believe it's about $15 from the 1618 extension. So they're definitely worth watching. This example is a daily chart of Intel, taking a prior high to low swing, extending upwards for resistance. 1272 did not stall it, but the 1618 did. And honestly, I don't think I can read that. It's too small. It looks like it's about $5 from there. Another example of price extensions. This is in CMG. This is where, when this market was going, straight down, you wanted to look for where it might terminate the decline. Now, we didn't see much at the 1272. There was like a stall for a day or two. But at the 1618, that came in at 262.71. Actual low was 263. And it doesn't look like much, but this is a weekly chart, and I believe the rally was about $82 from that extension decision. Okay, so how about price projections? How many people use those? They're essentially measured moves, okay? So here, with the projections, what I'm doing is I'm looking at prior low to high swings, projecting from another low. I'm using 100% all the time for symmetry, what I like to call symmetry, and then sometimes 618. So low to high from the low for resistance, high to low from a high for support. And basically what we're doing is we're taking all retracements, extensions, and projections and putting them together. All right, so here's an example of a projection in crude oil. This is a daily chart of crude. Basically took a prior high to low swing, projected 100% of that from the next high. So the prior high to low was $3.12. This high to low was $3.11. That's what I call symmetry. So symmetry is similarity or equality when comparing swings in the same direction. And after holding that area, so it was off, by a penny, looks like, I think the low was made at 55.86. We ended up seeing a gorgeous rally off of a very simple projection. That's just 3 clicks of the mouse. High, low, to the high. All right, another example of a projection. This is in Google on a 60-minute chart. Here, I ran the low to the high from the low. We ran the 100% projection, which did not stop the market at all. We gapped through it. But the 1618 projection did end up capping the move. Another example of a projection, this is a 30-minute chart, S&P futures. Here we had a prior low to high swing that was 91 points. Projected that from the next low, gave us the 3097 area. And it looks like 3096 and a quarter was the actual high. So again, something very, very simple can be very, very powerful. So very powerful trade setup that I use every day is called the Fibonacci price cluster.
I just want to put a thought on a compendium on Carolyn's work. I've been working with Carolyn when I actually first came into the industry for over 30 years. And when we first started, we first met, we were both in the markets. I was in Chicago at the time, and through the years we've stayed in touch, and she's grown her business. Some of you probably have seen her if you watch what is it, CNBC, and she'll be on Cramer periodically when Jim Cramer is looking to find a low for the market or a high or some place to rally. So she's now Queen of Fibs. Before she was the Fibonacci Queen. I've looked at her work for years, and I think everybody, if anybody knows me, I look at the business of trading and investment as a science. The science is what I try to boil things down to so that we can have longer term objectives and try to achieve wealth growth or even possibly trade on a shorter time basis using science. For years, I've tried, literally when I was down in the Virgin Islands on a program down there, Carolyn and I, she visited me in the Virgin Islands. We were looking at trying to codify this kind of work, where you buy things on different time frames. But as you can see from her putting these things up on the screen, it's an art. This is an art. Trading is an art. We try to make it as simple as we can, but at the end of the day, when you use these kind of concepts, especially Fibonacci, time-price relationships, and remember, most of us on a screen only understand Fibonacci as an extension or some kind of a retracement. I think, have a lot of us know what a 618 is? 618s? Okay. For those of people that didn't raise their hand on this, it's called a Fibonacci series, and if you just think of it, it's the sum of the two numbers before it. And if you divide the numbers by the previous numbers, you'll find that it converges. It's a converging series. And so when I see things that use series, that's kind of, it is a science. There's all kinds of series that exist in this world, but this particular series edifies itself in various things in nature, things that are from the way a leaf grows or the way a nautilus twirls. It's a concept that we know in terms of Fibonacci when you see the, what is the
nautilus shell?
Yeah, yes, he's this. It's literally the length from your shoulder to the side of your body is approximately 618 of the length of your body. It's why when you put your hands out like this, it's generally your height. There's these kind of ratios, and when you see ratios like this, you say, hey, wait a minute, this reoccurs all over the place, and guess what? It also appears in the markets. And so when you see her put these numbers here, she talks in a trader's language. Traders understand that we're going to put up an ADX, we're going to do an extension, there's a tracement here. One of the interesting and most important factors of her work, though, is everything is not just about price, it's about time. So sometimes when you'll see, when she has these little things down here, she's looking at time extensions that are also Fibonacci based. So what she tries to look for is these relationships where price and the time extension of Fibonacci ratios come together. It is extremely difficult for me to program this. So, and this is what I've done, and this is what my business in my whole life was, really working for very wealthy people, and they tried to get information out of the markets that they could use to be able to manage their risk or execute trades. And this was something very difficult for me to code, and I've tried. So at some level, some things boil down to an art. It's not like someone could teach me to paint like Da Vinci. It's just not going to happen. But at the end of the day, her following is wide and it's large, and the reason is because people that trade are looking for every edge they possibly can. Whatever edge you can get to be able to put on a successful trade and manage its risk is very important. And so sometimes the language, is befuddling. At the Money Show, I've seen literally 400, 500 people sitting around watching Carolyn do these same exact things. And it's a quiet room because even if they're traders, it's happening so fast. And so that's why she's involved in these groups where she has a service, and the service says, hey, I'm just looking at the S&Ps, I want to be a day trader, or I'm going to trade over the next few days. And she'll give the setup for that. And so there's requests. She looks at anything from Pepsi to S&P futures to currencies. It doesn't matter. These things work on all time frames, all symbols, because at the end of the day, a price series is a price series. And when we're trading, all we're really doing is trading a price series over some element of time. And so at the end, when I look at this work, I know this stuff works. How can I trade on it? I couldn't do this. There's a certain software she uses that creates those clusters. Clusters are when many things come together when she builds those charts. A lot of people just simply subscribe to the service because there's no way they're going to be able to figure how to say, what high do I mark this on? I've heard questions to her. Here, what low are you using? Why do you use that low? Because it's a low. And she's just looking for these relationships to come together. And periodically, the more these things cluster, the more likely it is a zone of interest. So when I'm trying to do what I do, I can't look at the micro level. I don't go to 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I'm not a day trader. But at the end of the day, I have seen these things work for years. For 30 years, I've watched this. And I've been in the markets a long time, as long as Carolyn. And when I find the edification of this work is something that is artistic. So many other people, they try to boil it down to a simpler science, but at the end of the day, this science, whenever you see a market move one way or the other, ultimately there was something that boiled down to this approach. And if you look historically, it'll always boil back down to this. For those of strength, this is something that I literally, is one of those things like in the Bible, book of Hebrews, it is God is in man. I cannot know. I cannot understand it. I don't know it. I feel it exists. It must be true, but I have to have faith that it is going to be that way. But you'll never be able to understand it in general. So at the end of the day, with this is something that is a science, but it is also deeply embedded as an art. So that's something I want everybody to know. Thank you very much, Carolyn.